You know what pisses me off? Every time you're about to start speaking, you pop your lips. You go right before you start talking every single time, and I have to cut it out.
You really cut it all out? I don't even know. Well, I guess is that why I don't notice it, because you cut it out every time?
That's the thing is I hear it 10,000 times.
Being in front of the camera is hard too, you know.
I'm just sitting in my chair like fuming, and like I'm sitting like this, and my spine is like a lowercase j, and I'm like, these amateurs, I don't know what they're talking about. Hello and welcome to It's Me.
Wow,
I'm here
what
now.
a massive improvement, Aaron. Thank you for joining. Aaron, I'm sure as everyone is well aware, is our wonderful editor here on This Is. And Aaron, you came to me the other day. You're like, hey, I got something on my mind. I got something I want to talk about, which is usually not the way that conversation goes.
I sat Austin down in my office the other day and I said, listen, there are some market economics forces at play and we're going to have to do some restructuring. We'll wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors.
I think you can mostly replace me with an AI model and people wouldn't actually be upset.
I think we can replace you with a Nintendo 3DS.
I'm honored. You think I'm worth a 3DS?
It has Animal Crossing installed on it.
Oh, shit, that's pretty good.
You can replace me with a copy of Halo 3 for the Xbox 360.
So the gaming industry over the last, I'd say 2 or 3 years, has undergone some strategic restructuring. Basically a whole bunch of layoffs, a whole bunch of money losing operations from a number of studios. It's been a chaotic few years. Where is your head at on the state of gaming in 2025?
Yeah, I want to kind of set the stage here. My thesis is that I think over the last 2 or 3 years, we've even reported on, every 2 weeks you'll see EA has laid off 200 people, Tencent has laid off 500 people, Microsoft has laid off 500 people. You just see this story kind of replay itself, and maybe you've taken some of that in, but I don't know if anyone's really fully grasp the scope and the scale.
It's hard to keep track of because it's just, you hear it every couple of hours like, oh, that seems bad, but you don't actually go like, wait, how normal is this? How bad is this?
It's gotten so bad that there is an actual Wikipedia article just for the last 3 years of layoffs.
Oh, no, see, that means it's real.
What's going on? Why are all these layoffs happening? I think kind of a tectonic shift in the gaming industry, the software industry. This is different than the game crash of 1983, which you may have seen a video essay or 2 or 12 about.
To be fair, that was apocalyptic in nature would be the way I would describe it.
Yes, I would say this is not apocalyptic, but it's close. We were kind of in a completely different space we were in 2022 that we are in now. The dust is kind of maybe settled mostly, and the ground we're standing on today is completely different than the ground we were standing on in 2022. It probably would have started happening earlier in 2020 had the pandemic not occurred and everyone went home and everyone was just kind of scrambling, figuring out what the hell to do. And then there was an incredible amount of money that came into the industry. I think like everyone's stimmy checks got blown on Fortnite or buying a new gaming PC. Or
there were, like venture capitalists running around funding games. There were, companies like Microsoft buying Activision. There was so much just insane activity in the space. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Do you know what your latest project needs? An online presence beyond just social media. And that Squarespace has everything you need to get started building an online home for your brand.
Do you suck at graphic design like I do? Well, no worries, because Squarespace's Design Intelligence feature puts 20 years of design expertise to work with tools to guide you through every step of the design process. You can even get help with copywriting.
And if you want to get aesthetic with it, then Squarespace has a wide array of built-in visual design effects. It's super easy to pick out and apply that extra design sauce that will elevate your brand's visual language.
It's a breeze to set up your site to sell whatever you want, whether it's your time, your content, or your merchandise. You can easily put up online courses, blogs, and videos behind a paywall. All you have to do is upload, set the price, and choose if you want a one-time fee or reoccurring subscription.
So if you're ready to be a website wizard, then head over to squarespace.com/thisis to get yourself a free 14-day trial and 10% off your first website or domain. And thank you very much to Squarespace for sponsoring this episode of This Is. Do you think that the worst of the gaming issues with layoffs and cuts and stuff is behind us or ahead of us?
I think most of it is behind us. I think we can kind of talk about this era now is kind of circumspect. I think they've stabilized for the most part. I think layoffs will probably continue for a while. I don't know if they'll be at the scope that they were, but even still this year, we still have about 2,000 layoffs. We're only not even halfway through the year. We used to see gaming layoffs even before 2020. They used to kind of be project-based or cyclical in nature.
Yeah, the game's done.
Seasonal work.
Sorry.
Yeah, you finish, Destiny or you finish whatever, Halo, whatever. Projects would spin up and down all the time. Yeah, it wasn't good, but like that was a
the way it
different
worked.
type of layoffs than I think we're seeing now, which I think were more systemic layoffs.
Yeah. I would argue in a lot of ways that the gaming industry peaked in like 2020, 2021, everyone was at home, everyone was playing games, there was tons of money flowing around. And I think that era, some of the greatest games of all time, really sort of coming out in 2022, 2023, Baldur's Gate. There's so many titles that have launched, and I think the overall quality of games that are coming out from the last, 2-3 years are some of the best of all time, but there's also like a little bit of a tail on that, right?
Yeah.
Like the games that are coming out right now started development in 2019, 2020, 2021 when the devs had not been laid off yet and when the money was incredibly plentiful.
Yeah. For like a year or two after the pandemic started, I think the economy got like supercharged
Yes.
for like a year and a half. And then
Sugar high.
all of a sudden, every single company started to expect getting an unbelievable amount of money every 6 months.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of exploded. And then
Yes.
we've been in the hangover of that.
Everyone went out and touched the grass, and the video game companies were like, wait.
People can go outside?
Yeah.
No!
Yeah, people got tired of playing their 10,000th game of Apex Legends.
I will say, it's gonna date me. The last time I was in tryhard mode and actually trying to be competitive with any kind of shooter was Titanfall 1.
You hear about those people that are on remote islands in Japan that are still fighting World War II. There are actually some of us still now fighting for Titanfall 2.
And Respawn, who I think has had a hell of a last decade of ups and downs and ups and downs. They've basically canceled all, as far as we know, non-Apex
Pretty
Legends
much.
projects, right?
Yeah, let me take you through a mild timeline.
Please
of, like,
do.
In 2021, there were only like 500 layoffs. Pretty small, especially about the numbers we're about to get into. But in 2022, there were 8,500 layoffs. And then 2023, there were 10,000. Incredible. And we're still not done. Last year alone, there were almost 15,000 layoffs.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. In total, and still in counting this year, there's been about 36,000 people laid off. In any other industry, this would be a signal for collapse, I think. I don't know if we have to worry about games as medium collapsing because people will always want to play them, but like that is a staggering amount of money.
That's almost enough people to fill up Fenway Park in Boston.
That's a lot more people than there are in that stadium most days. So
I hear these numbers, and these are massive numbers, and I look at it in sort of two ways. One perspective is that the gaming industry got too big too fast, fueled by super cheap interest rates, VC money flowing in. It was a sugar high. And you can look at the sort of the trends. Gaming exploded so quickly during 2020, 2021. If you extrapolate out, these numbers are going to sort of stay stagnant or sort of continue to rise, that there were 30,000 jobs that absolutely could have been sort of kept up. However, what happened after COVID was that things didn't drop, but they did not go straight up. They sort of flatlined. Like
the line stopped going up. It was such meteoric, massive growth. I mean, we saw the live service boom, Apex Legends, Call of Duty, Fortnite, Destiny, all these games. That kind of growth is just, it is great when everyone's like, cashing in their lottery tickets, but it can't possibly go on forever. I think similar to kind of how we've reached peak console. I mean, consoles still exist, but they're not the profit drivers they used to be. I think we've hit peak gaming industry. It's still an industry, but when it's not booming, money's not going to be.
Can we pause on that?
Yeah.
So you think we've hit peak gaming, just period?
Yes. I would say so. I mean, how many live service debacles have we seen come out in the last 3 years?
How many games has PlayStation canceled?
Yeah, your Concords, your Suicide Squads. What's happening now, I think, is that the industry is kind of contracting back down to maybe a more sustainable, healthy, maybe healthy way. It's kind of similar to what happens in the film industry now. I think we reached peak film industry, probably Avengers 1 or 2 or something like that. But now all the movies we see now it's the same amount of money, but it's chasing after fewer projects because people are feeling defensive. They want to chase the sure thing.
Clearly, there has been a contraction in the gaming industry. I do generally agree with you that obviously layoffs are bad, but it was a sugar high. I think that there was too much money, there's too much expectation. We're coming back down to something which is resembling a hopefully healthy ecosystem where the gaming industry is now going to start living within its means and not just assuming that we're going to be twice as big next year or something. But I think there's also been a lot of actual structural change that has happened over the last few years. You think about Microsoft buying Activision, one of the largest acquisitions, not just in gaming, but in tech and just in general.
We've seen all of these gaming studios. The AA gaming space has kind of collapsed. You either, as a AA studio, you either got bought out by Sony or Microsoft or Tencent or Embracer or whatever, or you just stopped existing.
Most of those big names that you have listed are not currently buying it. You look at Tencent, I mean, the Chinese gaming market, for so long was going to be the next big thing. However, the gaming market in China is actually in some turmoil right now. There has been some major, shall we say, political headwinds. There's been a lot of rules and restrictions, and essentially most of the Chinese gaming market has essentially, just like I think in the West, cooled off, stopped, flatlined. You might think, oh, well, who cares if there's not, big companies who are buying the small ones. But the problem is that so many of the games and so many of the studios that are sort of existing right now and the new sort of things that have come up came up with the idea that, hey, we're going to raise a bunch of money, we're going to release a cool game, and we're going to get bought up, and that's how the sort of the thing is going to perpetuate. But when the big companies are not buying the small and the medium-sized companies, the small companies are just gonna die.
That's kind of what the industry is now, is you're either, talk about quadruple A games. People always thought they're the first one, but really Call of Duty, Fortnite, they have stupefyingly large amounts of money put behind them. GTA 6 is gonna be quite possibly the most impressive piece of software ever devised in human history. Games of this quality are just genuinely not possible anymore unless you have the support behind you of Microsoft, of Sony, or whatever. When GTA 6 comes out, no one's ever going to make a game that's even remotely close to that. When Cyberpunk came out, people thought that was going to be GTA 5 level, and it's just not. It's an amazing game. Baldur's Gate 3, people, that was a whole conversation for a while. No one's going to be able to make a game that's at this quality bar anymore because there's just not, the money isn't there unless you're either a quadruple A studio or you're, one guy in your bedroom and you make Balatro. There are still success stories out there, but they're more the single A variety.
I think it's easy as gamers to talk a lot of shit. If you think about the eye-wateringly high prices it costs, GTA 6, everyone knows that even though it has a supposed $1 billion budget over the last decade to build the game, they're gonna make that up. Most games aren't GTA 6.
Yeah, and unless your game is gonna be bought by every single person in America, it's not going to make that money back.
You see these success stories, but for every success story out there, there's a game that raised 30, 40, $50 million of budget to come out, and no one is paying attention to it at all. And I think it's really led to this current culture of, if you're not a sequel, or if you do not have some insanely hype sort of marketing strategy, it is so hard to stand out because the quality of games is unbelievably good. If you think about everything's on a 2, 3, 4, 5 year cycle, well, what's happening right now is that the games that are going to be coming out, at the end of this generation or the beginning of next generation, I think are going to be probably smaller in scale. They're either going to be a guaranteed hit, like from a huge studio or from a huge sort of sequel or whatever everyone knows, or it's going to be some indie style game. Like, I think the middle is getting absolutely scooped out of this, which feels really unhealthy for the industry.
And that's very doom and gloom, which is, it is. There are some positive things I think that happened, now that we're kind of on the other side of this gaping chasm of dead live service games, so that there are the SAG-AFTRA strikes, the voice actor strikes, the people who do performance capture for these games, they got some benefits. There was a lot of unionization efforts that happened. CD Projekt Red union, there's the ActiBliz QA tester union. I think and I hope that crunch exists less so now than it did before.
I think there's been improvements, right? Like, I think in a lot of ways the gaming industry is starting to grow up.
The nice things to take away now is how this is different from something like the game crash of 1983. Back then, you needed that Nintendo seal of quality or your game wasn't selling. You needed a backing of an Activision or an Intellivision or whoever. Nowadays, Steam does still exist. Epic Game Store still exists. Like these storefronts where one person can get, in front of every single computer in America is possible now. The tools that people have access to now, like Unity, Unreal Engine, you can make a game at a quality level that is pretty impressive. Look at, Clair Obscur that just came out.
I was about to say, that is a significantly more manageable amount of people working on a project. How many people do you think work on Call of Duty a year? It's got to be absurd.
They probably have 300 guys that just do the shading on like Seth Rogen's eyeballs.
But the thing is, I think if you were a studio, if you were someone who wanted to create a new game or something, your pitch for, hey, I want a bunch of money to, hire a bunch of people and build this thing, and what's your unfair advantage? Why, should you get the money? Oh, because I can make a really good game. That's just not an argument anymore.
Yeah, gathering investment as a strategy to run a game studio is probably just not a thing anymore.
You kind of need Big Daddy Phil to write you a check.
But you and your 10 friends can gather in a Discord and you can work on something for a year and you can get games like Blueprints, you can get South of Midnight, you can get Balatro. We talk about how the price of a premier game is $80 now, but like how many more games do we see now that are 10, 15,
it is true.
40? Call of Duty will be $80, but like I would say as a percentage, the average game price is probably still close to $60.
That's a good point.
It's
And-
just the ceiling got higher, but the floor has also been lower.
Yeah.
Take your expectations of like not every game can be
Yeah.
GTA 6, and so why should it be?
What one dev
scope
can accomplish now compared
is way
to
more. Yeah,
even
yeah.
a decade ago.
And
Is
you know, it's
night
like
and day.
you even think about consoles, right? Like back in the day, if you wanted to bring out a new console game, you needed a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of very expensive dev kits. You needed Microsoft or Sony or Sega or Nintendo to give you these dev kits. You had to buy them or rent them or whatever the case was. So huge upfront cost. Then you're going to spend your year, 2, 3 years, whatever, developing the game, paying all the salaries for all that time.
making your engine, licensing your tools,
100%.
doing all sorts of
And
stuff.
then at that point, you had your gold master. Then you had to pay for, hey, I'm going to send this out to one of like 2 different places who
Yeah.
would make the discs.
I need to pay Sony to print 40,000 Blu-ray
Absolutely.
discs.
Then you had to ship them off to the Best Buys or whatever of the world. And then if they didn't sell through them, you're on the hook to kind of take the games back. You had to do your marketing. Like, it used to be insanely just absurd to actually get something out on store shelves. Now, you could be a 10, 20 person team. You could release on Steam. They're going to take 30% of your game.
But your distribution cost is essentially
Is
zero.
much, much lower. There's a pessimistic and there's an optimistic view of this thing, right? And I do generally take a little bit more of an optimistic view. Of course, layoffs are bad. Of course, studios being canceled and shut down and everything are bad, right? I do think that there are some real headwinds on the business front, which of course matters. Games don't just make themselves, right? But I do think content-wise, we are living through an absolute golden age of some of the greatest games of all time that are coming out. Even though these games are expensive in many cases, there are services such as Game Pass that actually help you get into games that have to pay $80 every 3 months or whatever.
It's still the best deal in gaming by
so.
far. I'm
Yeah.
still kind of shocked that they haven't raised their prices that much, and Sony is still not even close to coming up with even a comparable alternative.
And I do think that hopefully the industry is sort of rebalancing itself in a more long-term friendly way. We actually should make studios and make businesses and, you know, design games that actually can stand the test of time. And we don't raise a bunch of money and with these unrealistic goals and the game completely flames out and everyone just immediately just gets laid off because the whole thing just evaporates. You know, it's not based on the whole, hey, let's just make a company, try to get something out there, and then please someone buy us before we die. And it's like, there's no one buying you at this point. Like, you're gonna have to stand on your own 2 feet, which hopefully leads to a much more healthy ecosystem.
Yeah.
I think some studios kind of have it figured out. If you look at like Ryuga Gotoku Studio, who make the Yakuza series, yeah, that's an established IP, but like they have it like figured out how to get these games like pretty high quality on like a somewhat tight budget.
So I think, like, in summary, I think we're kind of at the tail end of this kind of seismic shift in gaming. I think we're going to see kind of a lull, but mainly like what we'll see in terms of releases, I think is going to be still these mega massive tentpole games and then a lot of smaller indie
Innovation.
games. I think that's just what we can expect in the next few years. I'm sure Star Citizen will raise 700 trillion more
I'm
dollars, and
so over it.
they still won't come out.
I think it's a good time to be a gamer. We're still playing games right now that were made with the crazy money and all the kind of stuff over the last few years. If, you know, studios are closing down yesterday, we don't actually really see the impact of that until 2026, 2027, 2028. These things kind of come and go in waves.
These are the seeds that were planted probably
Exactly
3
right.
years ago. And
But there's still incredibly ambitious titles that are being made. There are small teams, there are frugal and sort of smart kind of developers who are actually doing this in a reasonable, constrained kind of way. It sucks that there have been these layoffs, but the hope is that it has helped push the gaming industry forward. And I'm going to stay on the positive side because I do think there's an optimistic viewing of this and that there was some pain that sort of the industry had to go through, but it just had gotten too big. Unrealistic to expect that gaming was going to go up 10% every year. Like, that's just a completely crazy idea. And now that we've kind of hit a more stable kind of equilibrium, hopefully we stay in a nice sort of zone. But it's as always, impossible to guess on what's going to happen in the future, except that Half-Life 3 is coming out this year, right?
yeah.
Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, ring-a-ling the ding-a-ling, and give Aaron some props in the comments for coming and massively improving this video. Matt has been staring off camera wistfully at his chair and his microphone.
I'm going to drink all of his Fireball.
Do you have any other pet peeves? Now's your time to
Now's the
unleash.
time. I don't want to add myself to the list of layoffs we're going to talk about today.
That's a great answer.